Hey y'all, my name is Nat. I hope you're having a terrific day today, and for this video we are doing my October reading wrap-up. So in the end, I only had one book from my Spooktober readathon that I didn't complete, and that was the Supernatural Enhancements, but I'm nearly finished with it. I just didn't finish it in time to film this. So first off, let's start with the stats because clearly that's the most important part. This month I read 10 books, and between those I read 3,706 pages. I averaged a rating of about 4.05 stars, so a really good reading month. And genre breakdown, I read 1 romance, 2 nonfiction, 2 horror, 1 thriller, and 4 fantasy. I keep saying fantasy isn't my thing, but the more I look at my stats, the more they tell me I'm lying, because apparently I read a lot of fantasy. This month I'm going to be going by chronological order. First off, I read The Wedding Party by Jasmine Guillory. This is actually the 3rd book in her companion novels of the wedding date world. For this one, we were focusing on Maddie and Theo, who are actually Alexa from the first book's best friends. They have always kind of hated each other, but eventually they end up sleeping together and deciding to kind of create a friends with benefit relationship, but they are determined to keep it hidden from Alexa. This was initially sold to me as a hate to love relationship, but I don't think at any point I would describe their feelings towards each other as hate. However, I tried to change my mindset to a secret relationship, and that made me enjoy this book a lot more because it was really hilarious when they would get in some of these situations where they're trying desperately to hide their relationship from Alexa, and they would have all these close calls and then just like laugh about it afterwards. That was really adorable. The sex in this book was a lot more toned down from The Wedding Date, which I really appreciated because I was wanting to read a romance, not erotica. Along with that, I just think Guillory's writing of the relationship developing was so much better. I genuinely could see Maddie and Theo being in a relationship compared to how I saw Alexa and Drew in The Wedding Date. In the end, this was a pretty cute, fluffy story. I gave it 3 stars. I'm kind of intrigued to try some more of Jasmine Guillory's, but I think I'm gonna be kind of picky about which ones I read. Next up, I read So You've Been Publicly Shamed by Jon Ronson. This was one of my nonfiction books and actually a book club read for that month. Essentially, the story is a compilation of all of these major public shamings that have taken place on social media, and Jon Ronson has gone to interview these people and look into the circumstances that happened around them. I loved the different avenues he would dive into, like the emotional and psychological toll that being shamed could really have on a person, the power dynamics of shaming, and how some of these people either bounced back or did not. This just really got me thinking about how our reliance on social media has created a situation where we constantly have to be our own PR teams, because if we post something on the internet, it is there for the world to see. It was also interesting to see how trends can last for days. And yes, a person may be shamed and like the following week you could say their name and no one would know who you're talking about. But if someone were to go Google them, all of that shaming would come back up and still be present. There were a few areas where I think Ronson kind of fell down a rabbit hole and would stray a bit too far away from his main point, so I did give this 4 stars, but overall I really enjoyed it. Very fascinating read. Next up, I read My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. This is a satirical thriller in which our main character, Kuroti's sister, has recently become a serial killer. She often kills her boyfriends and then will ask Kurode to come and help her clean up. Even though Kurode is so protective of her little sister Ayula, at the same time you can tell there's a lot of resentment there. I had very conflicting feelings about this book because I absolutely loved the writing style in it. It was like small little vignettes with a specific topic that was told to us in a very non-linear way. They might add more to the current situation that was happening, or they might actually reflect on past events. Usually I don't like it when stories do the bounce back and forth between a then and now, but it was actually fairly easy to follow here. I could definitely see some of the like satirical and ironic comedy, particularly when it came to just how far Kurode was willing to go to protect Ayula in these like ridiculous situations when you could tell she obviously realized what they were doing was wrong. However, I did not like a single character in this book. Our main character especially, she was a doormat. She was so annoying. It just made it very hard to stay invested in the story. For me, the ending was a bit unsatisfying, but I think it's because this story definitely doesn't follow the normal setup of a novel. It is definitely satirical and written in a way that is unlike what I would usually expect in a thriller. I ended up giving this 3 stars. It was a pretty good read, fairly short, would recommend. Next up, I read 5 books for my October 5x5. I will put a link to that in the cards right here, as well as in the description down below. I read and reviewed all of these books, but I will give you guys a little rundown of each of them and the rating. Hiccups and coughing. This is prime time for filming. First, I read The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones, and I gave this one 4 stars. Next, I read The Diviners by Libba Bray, and I also gave that one 4 stars. Next, I read Cemetery Boys, and I gave this one 5 stars. I buddy read this with Paige at the PM Reader, and I'll put a link to her profile in the cards up above. Definitely go check her out. Then I read Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, and I gave this one 4 stars. Then I read Monstress by Marjorie M Liu and Sana Takada, and I gave this one 3 stars. Next is a possible contender for a favorite book of the year, and this was Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and Other Tales from the Crematory by Doughty. This is a nonfiction read in which Doughty, a mortician and cremator, reflects on all of the things she's learned in her job over the years. I loved this. It was like a memoir meets morbid textbook with dark comedy and like a life philosophy. Doughty has just really made it her mission out of life to kind of bring death out of the closet that our society has pushed it into. Yes, we are all mortal and we will die, but that doesn't always have to be such a dark and dreary thing. This was a fascinating read that was funny and educational. I listened to the audiobook of this and it was narrated by Caitlin herself, and I really recommend it. It was so well done. I think her dry sense of humor with many of the jokes came across so much better. I gave this one 5 stars. If you couldn't tell, I really loved it. Finally, I read The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, and this actually lived up to all of the hype I've heard. I was very skeptical going in, but this was a great book. First off, Erin Morgenstern's writing is absolutely beautiful. She transports you into this gorgeous and dark world with all of these magical items and shows that just amaze you. Everything is so vivid and comes together to create such beautiful imagery. Ugh, the writing was just amazing. I just realized I should probably tell you guys what this is about, huh? This story revolves around Celia and Marco, who are both magicians and have been being trained almost their entire lives for this competition against one another that is going to take place within the night circus. However, it ends up interconnecting all of these different people and their lives and affects so many more than they really think. While this story was slow-paced, I think the characters were all fascinating. The competition itself goes unnoticed by most, but it really does affect so many people within the story, and I think their stories are interwoven together so well. I've heard some people say this is a duel, but no, it is much more of a competition and constant one-upmanship that somehow manages to turn into courting between the 2 main characters. I think my one complaint is I wish we could have just seen more of Celia and Marco. I was definitely intrigued and so invested in their relationship. I would have loved to see more of them on page. The main plot just has so many layers to it, and yes, I am usually the person to complain about too many points of view, but in this, I really didn't mind it because the story had me so enthralled with every single page. It was such a good read. I loved the audiobook of this in the end, but I cannot wait to read it physically and go through and mark it up as much as I can because I think this might be a new favorite. What noise just came out of me? Obviously, this was 5 stars. So guys, let me know in the comments down below, what was your favorite read of the month? I want to hear it. Let's talk about it. As always, thank you so much for coming to my channel today, guys. I really appreciate it. Make sure to hit like and subscribe down below. I come out with videos on Monday and Friday, but until then, I hope you continue to have a terrific day. Bye!